my name is Adam Kout. I'm driver of Hyundai Janík Motorsport in TCR Eastern Europe, and now I will show you my favorite places on Autodrom Most. Now we are in the first chicane on the Most circuit. It's after the start and finish straight. We have to brake very late here and stay on the right side after the right corner to have a good exit for the next straight. Now we are in the fastest corner on the Autodrom Most. Very late braking, one downshift and then on the throttle, and you can go on the curb as far as you can and take as much speed as you can to the next straight. We are in the series of the 3 corners known as Matador. Very late braking to the right corner, then you have to stay inside in the left one to be good prepared to the right third corner, which is full throttle, and take as much speed as you can to the last straight under the paddock. Those were my favorite places on Autodrom Most. I hope you enjoy it and see you in the race. Bye!
And with that we are back in Most for the next race of the Sunday's program. We've just had a great visit right on the starting grid. The President of the Czech Republic, Mr. Petr Pavel, also the Czech single-seater driver Roman Staněk, who has been racing in Formula 2 alongside the Formula 1 weekends, and he's just been here to be given the award, the golden steering wheel for the past season. The driver that actually made his way even through Formula 4 himself, so he knows full well what it means to race in such cars. We have got 8 drivers on the starting grid, just like yesterday for race number 2 out of 3. 3 Czech drivers on the grid in the mix as well, but it is Ethan Ischer on pole position, car number 27, lined up together with his teammate Renaud Francot, the championship leader. The Enzo Motorsport cars, 27-28. Those are the racing numbers of the pair. Row number 2, Matthias Bjerre-Jakobsen and Michael Sauter. In P5, Miroslav Mikeš from the Czech Republic, so one of the trio of the home racers. Alongside him, Hungarian driver Oliver Michel, and on row number 4, Jan Rieger and Max Karhan, enjoying their first ever racing weekend in the single-seaters, so gaining their very first racing experience with the single-seaters. And yesterday they had their first 25 minutes race, but now, to spice up their experience, they get to enjoy the first wet race of their career in the single-seaters. And it is quite a different challenge than it was in yesterday's race. Safety car on the track, and we are in the formation lap, 4,212 meters. That is the length of the circuit here in Most. And we will again have 25 minutes for the entire race. Let's see how many laps we can actually cover. It was a great race yesterday, and it was actually Ethan Ischer who went to score the victory. Michael Sauter made... well, he was going to make a good start, but actually he moved before the lights went out, and that's why he received a penalty. But he was not alone receiving the penalty. 10 seconds were added to the time of Miroslav Mikeš as well. So these 2 drivers, they were fighting for the podium place, for the remaining podium place towards the end of the race. And because of the penalties, they both dropped 1 place, and they were, so to say, jumped by Matthias Bjerre-Jakobsen, who finished on the podium in the end, together with his teammates from Jensen Motorsport. There was also a beautiful fight for 7th. Jan Rieger and Max Karhan, both of them enjoying their first outing, and they swapped places at the start and remained together for the entire race. They tried to put one another under pressure, and it resulted in a beautiful fight in the closing stages. Safety car is now away from the grid, away from the field. And we are going to see a rolling start because of the wet conditions. We're not going to start from the grid slots. So the race is now underway with Ethan Ischer leading from Renault Franco, the championship leader, who's immediately trying to use the slipstream. They're fighting into the first corner. Everybody has to be careful under braking. Mirek Mikeš missing the apex a tiny little bit, but the fight is still on for the race lead. There's been even a contact just as Ethan Ischer was trying to correct the beginning spin, and he hit his teammate, Renault Frankot. Frankot is now dropping down the order, and it's Michael Sauter who is moving in the other direction towards the top step of the race right now. Ischer still remaining in the lead, but this time from Sauter. Renault Frankot dropping down to 3rd, with Oliver Michel making progress. Then it's Rieger, then it's Mikeš, then it's Karhan. And we've already lost one of the cars, actually, that did not even start the race, which must be Matthias Bjerre-Jacobsen, who is actually missing in this race. So Ischer leading from Sauter. Renault Frankot following closely in 3rd. Very different experience up and down the grid. As I mentioned yesterday, Renault Frankot, even though he's the championship leader, this is his first ever single-seater season. And he's now fighting against already way more experienced colleagues with 40-50 races under their belts already. And Michael Sauter making a small mistake in the penultimate corner, which is now allowing Renault Frankot through. So it's the order of Jenser Motorsport 1-2 that's now restored. Ischer leading from Frankot, Sauter in 3rd. He's sort of all over the place, really fighting with his car, but still staying together with the leading Joe. And look how difficult it is for the drivers to actually put the throttle on the ground and actually get going. They're fighting for traction in every single corner. There are slow speed corners, or low speed corners, let's say, where you really need good traction. But actually, if you check the geometry on the cars, there's actually quite a large camber set on all 4 wheels on the cars, which means that when you're exiting the corner, not the entire tire is actually touching the ground, which is limiting your traction when you're trying to get going. Rieger up into 4th. Great progress from the Czech driver already. Oliver Michel dropped down to 6th. We discussed it yesterday shortly with Max Karhan that it's actually not so easy to spin the wheels on the dry track. The car is actually quite grippy, but when the track is wet, it's a very different story. And you'll notice that exiting corners, everybody's really having to apply the opposite lock to actually stay in the correct direction. Ischer leading, but Renault Frankot getting closer. So far, every single weekend has seen one name winning both races. Ethan Ischer scored his 3rd victory of the season yesterday. Is he going to win another one today, or is he going to get beaten by his teammate? There is a beautiful fight now between Mirek Mikeš and Jan Rieger, entering the first chicane, and around the outside now goes Mirek Mikesh. That was a beautiful fight, which we unfortunately didn't see. Isher leading from Frankfurt, Sauter third. Renault Frankfurt actually set the fastest lap of the race, 1:55.9. Of course, the lap times significantly slower than under dry conditions. It's still raining, even though only slightly. But it's still enough for the track to remain wet through the race. How about the fight for fourth? Is there any change? But you'll notice still in the graphics, which is actually valid from the previous lap, that there was only 2 or 300ths of a second difference between fourth and fifth. Now Rieger is back up to fourth. Yeah, he is. So he's dealt with Mirek Mikesh. Fight for the lead is on, but so is the fight for fourth between the two local drivers. "15 minutes left on the clock. And Ethan Isher set the fastest lap of the race, 1:54.7. Frankfurt was not much slower, 1:54.9. They are the only two cars right now lapping under 1:55. Ooh, and there's trouble. Car number 13, that is Oliver Michel. He had a slight excursion across the grass in the middle sector, but now he's back on the track, and presumably he'll still keep his 6th place. But hang on a second, we do see Matthias Bjerre Jacobsen in the live timing right now, 2 laps down on the leaders, but clocking laps. So it seems as though Matthias Bjerre Jacobsen, we did not have him right at the start, probably, but he is now actually recording lap times. Bjerre Jacobsen, car number 25, yes, is on the track. Albeit all the way down in 8th. So he started later. He probably had some sort of a technical trouble and may have had to start from the pits. Either way, it's good experience for him as well to be racing in the wet. So there he is, car number 25. Now having the track for himself, you'll see that his gap to everybody else is already incredibly big, over 4 minutes, of course. A couple of laps. But he's on the track and he's gaining miles, gaining kilometers. That's what he needs to do, especially on the wet track. That's always a handy experience. So even though this is no longer 4 positions, it's still valuable. 154.5 was the new fastest lap for Ethan Isher on the previous lap. What is he going to do now? His teammate is setting the fastest first sector. Renault Franco dropped under 28 seconds there. And across the line they go, 155.2 for Isher, but 154.5 for Renault Franco. And that's a new fastest lap. This is a beautiful scrap. Michael Sauter already coming under pressure from Jan Rieger, who in his opening weekend is now fighting for 3rd place for his first ever podium. Mirek Mikeš also close behind. Jan Rieger had a fight of his own with Max Karhan in yesterday's race. Today Jan Rieger is fighting for the podium. Ooh, and there's a fight between the race leaders, which is going wrong. Isher and Franco collided together and they're both off the track. Across the gravel, across the grass they go. This is a dramatic moment. So they were far ahead from everybody else. 20 seconds ahead from 3rd placed Michael Sauter. They had the track all for themselves. And all the stuff went nasty, all the stuff went wrong, and they both collided and ended up off the track. What a moment that was, and we do see a little bit of damage on the car of Renault Franco. Renault Franco dropping, and he sees his gap to grow to over 2 seconds. So Franco was reeling his teammate in, and he had set the fastest lap of the race, but then they collided together. And this is Max Karhan in his Jense Motorsport machine, slipstreaming past Oliver Michel. They are now running through the first chicane. Oliver Michel sliding through that, giving another chance to the young local boy, Max Karhan. These are the race leaders. Renault Franco getting closer again, but there is also a beautiful fight for 6th. Max Karhan in his first ever single-seater experience now, following his Hungarian rival Oliver Michel. It's the fight for 6th. It's getting interesting as well. Only 0.4 of a second between them across the start and finish line. Also Mirek Mikeš currently very close behind Jan Rieger. But Rieger dropped a little further behind Michael Sauter now. So there was a fight for 3rd, which is no longer on. How about fastest laps? And Renault Franco really has been giving it full beans after that contact with his teammate. So Ethan Isher 154.7 on the previous lap. Renault Franco 153.8, nearly by a second faster than his teammate. Isher all over the place. He's really fighting hard with his car, trying to stay on the racing line. Frankot reeling him in anyway. How about the sector times? First sector, Frankot was faster by about 1/10 of a second. In the second sector, the story reversed, so they are still sort of 1.3 seconds away from one another. Ethan Isher goes drifting through the final corner. His gap growing a little bit. The conditions are changing all the time. So Isher leading by 1.4 seconds from Frankot. Sauter currently in a rather lonely third. He was under pressure from Jan Rieger, but that is no longer the case. Rieger already losing nearly 8 seconds to him. Then Mirek Mikesh, who also dropped out of the fight with Rieger. There's now 5 seconds between them. Then we have got Oliver Michel in 6th. Max Karhan also losing a bit of time there. And he's now some 3 seconds behind. And Matthias Bjerre-Jacobsen, who rejoined the race a little later on, has been setting fastest laps as well. 150, what was his best time? It was actually 154.0, which was once the fastest lap of the race. This is Mirek Mikesh in the Sape Motorsport car. Matthias Bjerre-Jacobsen, he's 8th, and he will be 8th because actually his delay of the race at the start was too much for him to get into any contention, but at least he's lapping the track quite briskly. And with 5 minutes remaining, we've still got the fight for the lead on the hands and on the table. So Ethan Isher, he was victorious yesterday. He's currently on course to win another one and keep the record where in this year's Formula 4, in every single round, only one driver wins all of the races. We've got 3 of them actually here in Most for the first time. So not only 2 races, but 3. Ethan Isher currently leading, but Frankot now slightly faster once again. 1.2 between them. There is Mirek Mikesh. He's 5 seconds behind Rieger. It's now extending to 7. Because Rieger set his personal best, 157.0. Mikesh did 158.8. But this is now reinvigorating. Look at this, Max Karhan, he dropped out of touch with Oliver Michel a couple of moments back, but he is now back together with him, and he's managed to reduce the gap to just under 1 second, 7/10 actually. So the fight is again on. 3.5 minutes left, or 3.5 minutes away from home. So the fight for 6th is now on. We would very much like to see that. Oliver Michel, car number 13, Max Karhan, car number 144. These are the race leaders, close together still. But there is also an interesting fight on the other side of the track. For P6. How much of a gap does Ethan Isher now have? 0.6. Sorry, 0.5 even. So Renaud Frankot really getting close to his teammate. And this is bound to be interesting. There is Max Karhan, car number 144, still following very closely behind Oliver Michel. This fight is also very much on in the dying moments of the race. So still a lot to be watching. And even though we've only got just over 2 minutes left on the clock, the race is far from over on various fronts. Renaud Francourt has set another fastest lap of the race, 1:53.7. He was 3/4 of a second faster than his teammate Isher. How about here? Oliver Michel, Max Karhan on our camera lenses. And away we go out of the first chicane. Max Karhan trying to get into position. Back with the leaders. Look at this. This is already getting exciting. Final 2 corners. And Renaud Francourt in the position to fight yet again. And we are entering the last lap of the race. But who is going to win? We don't know. It's still very much open. Ethan Isher leading after 12 laps in this race. But Renaud Francourt less than half a second adrift. He's having a look down the inside into the opening chicane. And again, Ethan Isher seemingly sliding a little more as he tries to go back on power. Renaud Francourt close in second. Wonderful stuff from the two. And Ethan Isher trying to stay ahead. He's already been under pressure once, and that ended in the gravel for both of them. We've only got a couple of seconds left on the clock, so the time is up now. Pretty much 0-0-0 now. Let's see the fight for the lead. That's for the victory. And it's still raining. Look at that. It even looks like the rain is intensifying in the dying moments. This is where they collided in their last fight. And we've still got a couple of corners left. This is still not decided yet. Renaud Francourt lining up for a move. He ended up on the wetter part of the track, which now gives a slight advantage to Ethan Isher. Is there going to be another chance, or is it all over? Last couple of corners for the ENZA cars. Renaud Francourt having a look, trying to force his teammate into a slight mistake. He's now sliding a lot, and are they going to go side by side? They are really close to one another. Francourt also sliding. Now they're entering the start and finish straight, and this is probably going to be the one for Ethan Isher as well. Ethan Isher victorious for the second time this weekend. What a race this was. Huge pressure on his shoulders, but he defended that well from his teammate, who was piling the pressure on, and all into the very last meters of the track. But in the end, he did not manage to come up with anything. And Ethan Isher scores 4th victory of the season, 2nd of the weekend. But a beautiful, beautiful fight. Both the ENZA cars ending up less than a second away from one another. And that was a thriller. Michael Sauter 3rd, so he completes the podium. He was under huge pressure from the local drivers, but then he managed to shake that off and disappear into the distance. Honza Rieger, in his 2nd race of the season, ends up 4th. 18 seconds away from the podium. Great stuff from the local driver as well. Mirek Mikesh, again, equaling his best result of P5. Max Karhan actually then found the better of Oliver Michel. Fantastic stuff from the Czech driver as well. And Max Karhan did manage to squeeze in front of the Hungarian driver and ends up 6th. Great race for the newcomer as well. Oliver Michel P7 and Matthias Bjerre-Jacobsen, of course, in distant 8th, having started later due to some sort of issues. So he's 2 laps down on everyone. But what a race this was. You know, you'll just sprinkle some water on the track and the going gets exciting. What a race this was. But it is Ethan Isher victorious again for the second time this weekend, for the fourth time. For the second time this weekend, for the fourth time this season. Renaud Franco, the championship leader, will see his gap reduced once again. So the standings are getting also more and more exciting. And the single seat is about to enter the Parc Fermé, which is now being emptied by the Renault Twingo drivers who had their race earlier on today. Both of these championships still yet to race once more today. So Ethan Isher victorious from Renault Frankot, Michael Sauter in third, Jan Rieger in fourth, Miroslav Mikeš P5, Max Karhan P6, Oliver Michel P7, and Matthias Bjerre-Jacobsen P8. You've got that confirmed in the graphics as well. That's it for race number 2 of the Formula 4 Central European Zone. We will be back shortly from the grid itself, because the racing is about to go even more exciting, and we're going to take it up a notch in just a couple of minutes, because the second race of the Eastern European TCR is just around the corner. So make sure that you are back for that one. And for now, it is a very warm goodbye.